Hey guys, welcome back to this week's episode. So earlier this week, I got a present from one of my friends and it's the Acaia Pearl. So I have personally never used this particular scale before. I have only really had experience with the Lunar. And he figured that this might be something that I might appreciate and enjoy using. And so let's open this box together and give you guys a first impression. Let's go. Alright, so as usual, let's just take a look at the outside of the box. For those of you that aren't too familiar with this particular model, so the Pearl is sort of the original scale made by Acaia. This model in particular is still considered one of the best scales out there on the market, and a lot of cafes are using this scale as their Pourover scale because this is sort of the largest scale that Acaia makes. This scale is quite a bit cheaper than the Lunar scale. However, it's still got the speed and accuracy that Acaia is known for. So as always, let's take a look at the outside of the box. On the slipcase here, we have a quick rundown of the function of the Pearl and one of its main selling points being the small function via the mobile app. Removing the slipcase, we are just left with a very bare box and with a simple and clean Acaia Pearl markup. And let's go ahead and cut open the seal tape here. First thing we are greeted with is a pamphlet, just telling you the quick start guide as usual, and of course the 1-year limited warranty. Removing the top layer here. As it is a new scale, it does have this nice protective layer right on top. Do not place hot objects directly on top of the weighting plate, and you should be using a heat-resistant pad underneath the hot object. And according to this quick start guide, you also have to remove, and actually it tells you this right here, you have to remove the protective cushion. Again, little stuff like this makes me really appreciate sort of the unboxing experience, just the small attention to details that the scale includes, and some of these higher end, I would say like these premium product does include. So this scale have the same fundamental design as the Lunar, where it's sort of a reverse design, meaning that the sensors of the weight is actually covered by this top plate here, versus the traditional design where it's probably like this, where the opening to the weight sensor are actually exposed. This is actually the first time I ever held the Pearl in my hand. I have really ever seen them in cafes, and having this in my hand, it definitely doesn't feel as heavy as the Acaia Lunar. What I mean by that is just the Lunar is a much smaller scale, and once you pick that up in your hand, that one actually feels a lot denser, probably because there's more metal on that scale, and the Pearl being bigger actually doesn't feel as heavy as I imagined it to be. All right, let's see what else is in the box. So we have another protective foam layer and a Acaia sticker, and of course we have a large heat-resistant pad for the scale itself, along with charging cables. Yep, that's it. That's pretty much everything in the box. All right, let's clean this up, and I'm going to turn the scale on. So also similar to the Lunar, the charging port is on the back and it's not covered up by any sort of a flap or plug. So there might be some concerns there in terms of water damage. However, like I said, this scale is designed for the commercial environment. And based on the experience of some of my barista friends, they still consider this scale to be one of the best out there. And they haven't run into any problems in regards to water getting in the charging port. But I suppose it would have still been kind of nice to have some kind of covering for it, just for a peace of mind. So the next item on the quick reference guide is to simply download the app and then follow the instruction that's on the app. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. I'll be right back.
One eternity later.
All right guys, I am back from probably one of the most frustrating setup experiences that I've had recently. But anyways, before I get into the app itself and the connectivity, so before I get into details with that frustrating experience, I do want to point out a couple of things that I do like about the scale. So number one, the scale itself is actually very, very sensitive. It's very similar to the Lunar in that regard, where the scale will detect sort of any kind of change in weight, even let's say, that whole, leaving my hand on the table thing. It's going to lead the scale to detect some sort of weight change. So that is good. Sensitivity is concerned. I'm glad to see that it's sort of on par up there with the newer Lunar and the Pearl S scales. Number two, in terms of size, if I were to compare this right next to the Timemore Blackmirror, Acaia Lunar is actually quite a bit bigger. It's chunkier, it's thicker. Even though on paper it doesn't seem to be that much bigger. However, in person, when you just look at it, because it's thicker, it's slightly wider on the edges, it makes the scale just handles a lot chunkier than the Blackmirror. Now in terms of the display, the Acaia Pearl does have a larger numeric display. Both of these scales use a very similar display technology where it just go by digits. The newer Pearl S does use a matrix display which actually shows more information. So a couple things that I noticed right out of the box. With this particular version of the Acaia Pearl that I have, there are really just two main modes that you can go into. So number one, you have the weight mode with a single decimal measurement. And by holding the power button, it will get you over to the timer and weight mode. However, in this particular mode, you will actually lose one of the digits. So it will only show the whole gram number and not the decimal number. Now that might be something that's bothersome to some of you. It's something that kind of bothers me a little bit. There is a way to actually turn this timer mode over to an espresso timer mode. However, by doing that, although you gain the decimal digits back, you will lose the minute measurement over on the timer side. Just because generally speaking, for a shot of espresso, you will not go over a minute. So this is more sort of the constraint on the amount of digits that this scale can display, which is a maximum of 6. Now compared to that on the Timemore Blackmirror, it have a separate display for timer and also a separate display for weight. So all in all, after getting used to using the Timemore Blackmirror, this is a little bit of a hinder in my opinion. However, where the Pearl does trump over the Timemore Blackmirror is really in its responsiveness. So in terms of getting a reading, the Pearl just gets a reading a slight bit faster than the Blackmirror. I don't know if you guys can tell just based on the video here. The Pearl will just snap to a reading just a tad bit faster, as with the experience with the Acaia Lunar. All right, so with kind of the good part out of the way, let's go into the frustrating part of this first impression video. This is really just regarding the Acaia app on its own. So when I first downloaded the app, I noticed that it's got a really poor review as far as the Android experience is concerned. But I figured just go ahead and go through it anyway. So after downloading the app, it doesn't actually give you any instructions on how to set up the scale. It does not have any guide that is in this current app. It sort of just leads you through this sample Pourover selection screen, and that is pretty much it. So even when you go into the section where it says guide, it sort of just shows you the same Pourover tutorial that is at the beginning of the app setup, but it does not have any actual guide for the Pearl, which is a little bit frustrating. But what is even more frustrating is that I suspect this scale was supposed to just work right out of the gate. So basically you download the app, you turn on the scale, it's supposed to just work like that. However, it doesn't. As you can see, I'm just pressing the scale. However, the app is not getting any reading at all. I spent about an hour and a half trying to figure out how to get this app to be working, which honestly, it really shouldn't be this way. For a company that makes such great scales, I don't know why they couldn't get the app to be working. Now, it might be an isolated Android problem, but to me, it just feels like a problem that should not exist, especially if the smart function is one of the functions that you guys are sort of pushing regarding this particular scale. So anyways, when you go into setting and you go on to select scale, I have tried many times to sort of scan and try to detect the scale, but nothing comes up. I restarted my phone, I have restarted my Bluetooth. I even try to figure out how to get into the menu of the Pearl to figure out what the sort of the update version that I'm on, which I'm on version 1.74. Then I figured, hey, listen, there might be a new firmware. So I went ahead and actually downloaded the Pearl updater, and I went through the steps over there. It still wouldn't connect to the app. So nothing seems to be working at this current point. I feel like I have exhausted all of my options. And it seems like there's no way to sort of connect the scale to your computer via wire and update it that way. And the other weird thing is I have actually went ahead and downloaded a PDF user guide for the Pearl. According to the guide, the scale is supposed to have a Bluetooth on and off mode, and which is what I'm seeing based on the Acaia's YouTube video as well. However, when I went to the setting menu of this Pearl, the Bluetooth function is not one of the options listed. And on top of that, this particular scale is supposed to have about 6 or 7 different modes that you can turn on and off. However, in mine, I only have 2, which is the timer mode as well as the espresso mode. And what's even more frustrating is that once you turn on the espresso mode, you actually lose the normal Pourover mode that is on the scale. So that is also a little bit frustrating, sort of in my opinion. I believe they have updated the Pearl S to be much better in that regard. However, I think for a scale that costs $150, it really shouldn't be this frustrating to try to upgrade. So what I'm going to do at this current point is to reach out to Acaia support to see if I can get any solutions to my problem there. So if any of you guys are actually watching this video that are currently using the Acaia Pearl with an Android device, would you please let me know in the comment section down below just on what your experiences are, and if you guys have any solutions for the problem that I'm currently encountering. But anyways, that is what I'm gonna say about the smart part of this particular scale in this video. Hopefully I'll be able to get an actual resolution for the full review down the line. But that is that. As it stands right now, I think if accuracy and speed is all that matters to you in a scale, the Acaia Pearl is a great choice. However, at half the price and sometimes even 1/3 the price, the Timemore Blackmirror, in this particular case, I feel it's a much stronger choice when it's compared to the Acaia Pearl, just because it works right out of the box, and by default, it can be used for espresso as well as pourover without going through that annoying settings menu. Not to mention, in terms of build quality, these two are actually quite similar. Now, I am not gonna lie, the Pearl does look better aesthetically just because of this clear external shell, and overall, the material just feels a bit more premium. The edges are just slightly better finished off. However, the Blackmirror have a smaller footprint. Even though it does not fit on the Barista Express as well as my smaller scale, I find the Pearl to be just slightly too big and too chunky for the Barista Express. And one more thing I want to touch upon going back to the display is that the Timemore Blackmirror, although have a smaller display, it does look sharper when compared to the Pearl. I believe the new Pearl 2021 version does fix that issue. I think they upgraded the display so that it will show better in direct lighting. But even in indirect lighting, due to the clear top layer, it does bring a bit of a hazy look to the numeric display itself. So it's really up to the individual to judge which one of these two displays work better for you. Alright guys, so actually I didn't expect the first impression to turn sort of this frustrating. Because of the previous experience with the Acaia Lunar, I sort of had a little bit of higher hope for the Acaia Pearl. But anyways, as with other things on this channel, I want to give you guys the honest experience that I have with these products. So unfortunately, this is how the video sort of turned out today. So with that said, I'm going to reach out to the Acaia support, like I said, and hopefully for the full review, I have something better to say. But that is pretty much it for this episode. Hopefully my experience is helpful to some of you guys out there that are looking to purchase this scale, even though it's a little bit frustrating. As always, if you have not subscribed yet to our channel, please take a moment and do so. Of course, you can also support the channel by giving us a like and a share. And that is it for this week's episode, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.